Welcome to Highland League Weekly, the podcast from the Press and Journal. I'm Ryan Cryle. I'm joined by Callum Law and Paul Third, our regular Highland League Weekly panellists, and we're going to be discussing all of the weekend's action in the Breedon Highland League. 9 games on Saturday once again over the weekend. This section is taken from our main Highland League Weekly web show over on the Press and Journal website. Just a reminder, you can subscribe to watch highlights of 2 matches every weekend from the Breedon Highland League. This weekend we filmed Lossiemouth against Deveronvale and Keith against Buckie Thistle. So go over to the Press and Journal website if you'd like to watch those. You need to be a subscriber to do so, but you can subscribe at the moment via our sports pack. But that first game, Lossiemouth against Deveronvale, ended 3-1 to visitors. The Vale, Callum, Vale kind of needed that, didn't they, momentum-wise?
I think that was, as Gary Wood sort of touched upon after the game, it was much more like what he was looking for in terms of they'd lost those back-to-back games against Turriff in the league and that Evening Express Aberdeenshire Cup. And I think really in both, there was a feeling there was a bit of a sort of lack of fight about them, and they were too easy to play against. You certainly couldn't accuse them of being that on Saturday. They were much more like it. Both teams. Wind didn't spoil the game a wee bit, and it became scrappy at times, but Deveronvale, they were always competitive and they found a way to get that win. And I did think the subs made a big difference. Like, it was 1-1, 65 minutes, Oleg Douglas and Ryan Park came on. Well, Ryan Park scored one and Oleg Douglas looked a handful the last 25 minutes. I thought they more than played their part, and also thought Cammy Angus, when he came on with quarter an hour to go, he set up a third goal, but he looked, handy as well, and that was sort of, it felt like at that stage in the game it was requiring sort of a player to take it by the scruff of the neck or somebody to change it, and I think Deveronvale's subs were able to do that, whereas maybe Lossies weren't quite able to do that.
Yeah, I think Lossies sort of, there's certainly a bit of a downturn in the second half from them.
Defensively, I think that's where the problems lie at Lossiemouth, where coverage pretty much shows that. There's one incident in the game in particular where they just get themselves into a whole world of problems at the back, trying to pass it between each other, and then the ball's getting higher and higher, the goalie's coming out, the defenders try to head it back to where his goalie was before he came running out, and it just bounces past the post.
And it's easy for us to say, but it's like you look at the 3 goals they've conceded, and it's like the first one is really a totally needless foul out in the touchline. I think, to be fair, that was maybe a wee bit of retribution for Matty Nicol, because he'd been caught off the ball a couple of minutes before by Fergus Albert, so there was a wee bit of needle there. And Stuart Knight, I think the wind again made it difficult. I think Stuart Knight would probably feel another day he would save it. The second one didn't really defend the cross well and had opportunities to clear, and then even when the Ryan Park shots blocked, the dirty act to the loose ball. And the third one, Lewis McAndrew doesn't need us to tell him about it, just heavy touch and just cause their own problems, really. I think Steve Porter said as well, like, first half the goal they scored was actually a really good move. They managed to spring Liam Harvey into good cross, good finish. But second half, we didn't. Other than that, just before actually Vale's second goal, that Connor McCauley chance, which the angle we had in it, you maybe don't see, but where I was sitting in the stand, I was right behind it, and it was good. It was a really good block for Grant Maroney, because it was drifting right in the far corner, and Sean McIntosh, I didn't think, would have saved it. So but other than that, in the second half, it didn't really have anything going forward, and I think that was a disappointment for them, because in sort of periods in the first half, they looked, I thought Liam Harvey and Sean Cameron as a 2 worked quite well and looked reasonably threatening.
Worth saying at this point that it's worth your subscription alone to have a look at Deveronvale's away kit this season. Very tasty. Very tasty, sort of navy and white number from them. Okay, let's move on to our second game we filmed the weekend, which was Keith against Buckie Thistle. It ended 2-0 to the visitors. 16 games unbeaten now for Buckie, following a great end to the last season and what's been a great start to this season.
That's it. 5 wins out of 5 in all comps, 4 out of 4 in the league, and it was just like deja vu, really. They beat Keith 2-0 at Cryle Park in the Aberdeenshire Cup in midweek, 2 goals in the first half, and did the same again here. And I thought they played some really nice stuff, and I think Lewis McKinnon's only complaint maybe would be that they didn't score more. They had a few off target, and Craig Reid, as we saw, if you've seen the highlights, Craig Reid had a few good saves as well in the Keith goal. And I think you look at Buckie and that front players that they've got, Josh Peters, Finn Allen, Aaron Nicholson, Lyle Keir, Ross Morrison who scored, Marcus Goodall was on the bench on Saturday, he came on. Like, a lot of good attacking options, and they're playing some really nice stuff, and both goals they scored were lovely moves, although I do think for Keith they'll probably be particularly disappointed with the first one because they lose the ball high up a pitch and they just get sort of played through too easily, really, in terms of the opening being created for Lyle Keir. But over the piece, you'd have to say, excellent stuff again for Buckie, and it sets up a sort of interesting week ahead. They're at home to Strathspey on Wednesday, and then on Saturday they're away to Brechin, which, in some ways sort of feels like the first major test for them, potentially. So that's set up to be a cracker. I think for Keith, they've had a tough start in terms of the games they've had, but I think both games against Buckie, Craig Ewan has felt in the first half they haven't really been able to match Buckie's intensity and their sharpness, and that's been a concern. I think also Keith have been saying it for a few seasons now, but goals or lack of remains a concern. I mean, their first 5 games in all competitions have only scored twice, which is a statistic they'll clearly be keen to improve. Yeah.
What strikes me with Buckie as well is like it's the players that have kind of been brought in to revamp the squad following that title success a couple of years ago. That you're seeing every week scoring, contributing.
Aye.
Okay, let's move on to the other 7 games to take place in the Breedon Highland League on Saturday then. We'll start with Brora Rangers 2, champions winning 2-0 against Inverurie Locos at home. Brora back to winning ways following a disappointing defeat against Fraserburgh last weekend. Despite in this game, Jordan McRae, their captain, playing at centre-back, still managed to get on the score sheet though, didn't he?
Oh, not half. What a strike it is. It's a 30-yard free kick pinged into the top corner. He'll be playing centre-half every week if he keeps that up. That's just Jordan McRae doing his bit for the cause. It shows how versatile he's going to be, and maybe as he gets older it shows maybe what may lie ahead for him if he can go back and perform that consistently well at centre-back. But yeah, Brora are exactly what they say on the tin for, as we know. They're just relentless. They score goals. They don't give much away. Locos, it was probably a difficult afternoon for them, just considering the conditions, the goal that they've given away, the free kick, and the number of players they've got missing. They're not having their problems to seek at the minute.
Quite a few youngsters.
Yeah. And it showed. It did show.
Yeah, I noticed Connor Bunce as well. He was also on the score sheet, looking good for my tip for player of the season at this point. Although we'll come on to somebody else. We'll come on to somebody else. Okay, Callum, anything to add?
You were saying about Jordan McRae playing centre half. Has happened before. People remember Derek Nichol, who was brilliant striker for Keith at one time. The last sort of few years of his career, he played centre half. But Jordan's a long way off with that.
I'm not putting him out to pasture.
No. Another thing for Inverurie, you're on about players missing. They've signed. I was interested to see they signed Bradley Chikomo, a 16-year-old striker on loan from Aberdeen before kick-off. So we'll sort of await to see what sort of impact he can make at Harlow Park.
Yeah, I've seen him play before actually at Peterhead in the summer, and big built for a 16-year-old in fairness. Formartine United 2, Nairn County 0. I mean, 2 from Rory McAllister in this one for Formartine. If there were any questions about whether he'd score regularly in the Highland League, I think they're put to bed now.
Well, it's a real simple equation when it comes to Rory McAllister. If you give him service, he'll give you goals. That's 4 now for the season. And just keep feeding him and he'll keep scoring. What else is there to say? As proven track records go, he must be up there with anyone in Highland League history, and this is his first camp.
Scottish football, really.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Formartine are giving me kind of real deal energy this season so far.
It's a good start. And Stuart Anderson will say that's all it is. A good start, I think we all know what Stuart Anderson's like. He's not going to get carried away. But yeah, he's recruited well in the summer. They look a formidable outfit. But yeah, we're 4 games in, 30 to go. Let's just see what's coming.
Okay. Nairn, to be fair, I think they had injury issues, didn't they? Wayne McIntosh had to play a full game at centre half, was it?
He was. It was the full game anyway. It's the same situation as Inverurie for Nairn. They've got guys missing and they're struggling because of it. 4 points from 4 games so far this season. It's tough.
Okay. Forest Mechanics 4, Fraserburgh 1. Another kind of what result this season? Not because, Forest aren't a good team. More that Fraserburgh, last weekend we were talking about them going out and, comprehensively beating the champions Brora Rangers. And then they're going to lose 4-1 to Forest the following weekend. Matt Jameson and Mark McLaughlin's screamer made it 2-0 for the break. Jameson then scored again. Keenan Simpson headed a goal back for the Brock, but Joe Barber was then sent off for handball outside his area. We've seen a million of those on Highland League Weekly. Kyle McLeod then completed the scoring, but yeah, great result.
It was, I think, by some distance, Forest would say it was their best performance of the season. Stephen McDonald has said he didn't feel they had fired in the first 3 games, and he was sort of looking for them to show they could sort of hit the heights they hit at times last season, and I think Saturday was certainly a demonstration of that. And I think particularly pleasing see the impact these forward players made, like Matt Jameson scored a couple. I mean, Kyle McLeod was given the goal, but having seen footage, does look rather like a Dylan Robertson own goal. So I'm intrigued to know who the referee put that down to. I know Kyle will claim it because that's what he's like. Well, what all strikers are like. But he was involved. Callum Frame involved in sort of the setup of some of the goals as well. And it's like, there's a lot of spoken about Jordan Alongi going and things, but they've still got very good forward players for us, and that was a really good performance. And I think beyond the goals, they actually created quite a lot of other openings as well, which was very encouraging for them. And for having not fired, and they felt they hadn't fired in the first 3 games, and then they've won Saturday, to have 7 points out of 12, it's a pretty reasonable start overall and something for them to build on. I mean, Fraserburgh, it's sort of like almost from the sort of sublime to the ridiculous a wee bit for last Saturday to this Saturday. But I mean, Mark Cowie had no complaints, said they were second best all over the pitch, got what they deserved. The Joe Barber sending off was kind of interesting because Brian Hayes short with a back header, and I think it's Matt Jameson goes in, and Joe Barber's come rushing out and he's just sort of blocked it with his arm. But I know Brian Hay and Joe Barber were both sort of remonstrating because initially when the ball goes up, Matt Jameson is offside. But it's that question of whether he's active or not. But once Brian Hayes headed it back, it's like a new phase of play, and he's then, he's able to play it, able to go for it because Brian Hayes played it. But there was that debate a wee bit about whether he was interfering with the play in terms of his presence making Brian Hay
head that ball.
Well, this is the thing, but to be fair, Mark Cowie had no complaints with it. He said letter of the law, red card, so that was that. And I just think for the Brock, it's like a head scratcher for them in terms of how they get sort of hit their levels game to game. It's finding that consistency again, because if you look at in all competitions, their 5 games this season, an excellent performance last week against Brora, a pretty good performance, or a very good performance actually, against a strong Aberdeen team in midweek in the Cup, and they got beat. They could have on another night potentially got through. A reasonable performance against Formartine on the opening day, but then 2 performances for us in the Huntley game as well, where they got beat 4-0. Both those performances where they look at them and go, that's not acceptable. So it's just need to sort of find that way to, it's not easy saying it and not easy to do, but find a way to get closer to that Brora performance more regularly. The last thing I'd say about this game is I wish the best to both Kyle McLeod and Kieran Simpson as well, because they were involved in quite a nasty head collision towards the end. Totally accidental, but I'd really sort of bad clash, and I think they both got stitches on Saturday night, so I hope they're none the worse for that.
Yeah, Kyle McLeod maybe doesn't remember he scored.
Oh, I'm sure he will. I'm sure he will.
Anyway, don't need to say too much about Rothes 1, Brechin City 8, I don't think, despite being the most goals of any game, I think, at the weekend. Rothes described as woefully under strength, already struggling. Rothes, of course, 4-1 at half time. 4 goals in the second half? Grady McGrath, hat-trick again.
What's him up to 7 goals already this season? All those predictions we made about top scorers, it's looking rather...
it doesn't count if the person hasn't signed.
It wasn't in the league.
Rather ominous already, but I think, Brechin, you would have expected them to win, and they've done that 4 out of 4, and now even at this stage of the season, this week feels both very exciting and also interesting. On Wednesday night they play Banks of Dee at Spain Park, and then on Saturday they're at home to Buckie. Both games you'll be able to watch in Highland League Weekly, funnily enough. But those, I'm interested to see how Brechin get on in these games now, because they've had a good start, and it's games with the greatest respect. I think they themselves would have expected to win. They've done that, so now it's like they're maybe tested in slightly different ways now. So it's interesting. For Rothes, I think Ronnie Sharp's quotes after were interesting in terms of, he said, like, after they let in the first goal, it was like mistake after mistake defensively. And that is the issue for them. I mean, they've shown, even though they were missing on Saturday, the likes of Ross Logan, Rory Duncan, Kenzie Shepherd, Rory Williamson, Robbie Lean, they have shown so far this season going forward they can cause problems for teams, but defensively they're conceding too many goals.
May as well just discuss at this juncture, Buckie Thistle, Banks of Dee. Callum, 3-0 win for Banks of Dee away from home. What, first win of the season for them? I think it was a big Pataudry day out for some of the players yesterday. I saw a couple of them. But I mean, the big talk about in this game is Strathspey. They felt they should have had a penalty in the first half before any scoring took place when Sean Morrison was taken down by Daniel Hoban. Ryan Essen was certainly angry about it in his post-match comments, and he's a goalie. Let's say so. No goalkeepers union for him.
And Daniel Hoban's a falla as well. So
Joe McCabe had a goal ruled out for Dean.
Kane Winton hit woodwork as well.
But then Magnus Watson, Mark Gilmore, and Andy Hunter, a penalty from him, eventually won it. But yeah, we've got to come back to that penalty incident, don't we?
I think, to be fair, should clarify, like Ryan Essen did say as well, that he felt over the piece Banks of Dee were the better team, and he was disappointed with his own Strathspey's performance. I think it felt like a missed opportunity for them. One, because he didn't feel they hit the heights that they have in other games this season in terms of their performance, and secondly, because even despite that, it was 0-0 up until 79 minutes, and when it got to that stage, I think he was thinking, well, we should be in a position to at least as a minimum maybe see this out and get a 0-0 or something. But the penalty, I mean, Banks of Dee had good chances in the first half as well. And I said second half that the goal ruled out. Kane Winton hit a post. Daniel Whitehorn had a very good chance for Strathspey as well, I believe, in the second half at 0-0, which Daniel Hoban saved. But the penalty incident shot, I have seen footage. Sean Morrison sort of gets in and just lifts the ball over Daniel Hoban, and then there is contact. To be fair, both players bounced back up quite quickly, but certainly Ryan was incensed that Strathspey didn't get a penalty for that, and I can understand why, having seen it, and also because, aside from anything else, at that stage of the game, if you get the penalty and score it, it could be a big turning point. So I can understand that. But Banks of Dee, certainly, with a slightly depleted squad, that was a good victory for them and a welcome clean sheet as well. And now it sort of sets them up nicely for Brechin on Wednesday.
One thing in Brechin's favour so far this season is, bar Buckie, a lot of the other teams just haven't been able to kind of consistently rattle off the wins. One of those that surprised me, Huntley won Wick Academy 2 on Saturday. Sam Robertson finished, so Huntley were in front in the game at half time even. Early in the second period though, Ewan Kennedy struck, and I think he then set up
Mark McGregor
for the winner. Michael Clark sent off late on for an alleged elbow, Owen Rendell. But yeah, I didn't see this one coming.
No, to be honest, I don't think a lot of folk did. But I mean, Wick, all credit to them, first points this season in a very good result. Regardless, away from home would be a welcome victory, but particularly with the start Huntley had. But just maybe shows the difference a wee bit. Last week against Formartine, Wick, I mean, they've still quite a few boys out, but they were maybe missing someone at the top end with the players they'd missing. Ewan Kennedy and Mark McGregor both missed last weekend, but they were back on Saturday, and you maybe see that difference. And I know Mark McGregor, especially in terms of the players, the makeup of Wick squad, he's a very important player just because of that physical presence and the focal point he provides when he's available at the top end of the pitch, and it allows Ewan Kennedy's, Davy Allen's, Kyle Henderson's, Gordon McNabb's, whoever it is, to sort of play off him. So I think the return of Ewan Kennedy and Mark McGregor was a big help for Wick, clearly, and they'll hope they can sort of push on for that because that's an excellent result for them. I think for Huntley, it'll be a real frustration. Like, you look at the first three games, Forres away, Fraserburgh at home, Inverurie away. If you'd said to them, you'll get 7 points out of 9 for that, you'd be absolutely delighted. And then when you look at the next games, Wick at home, out of that first 4, being honest, that's probably the game they would fancy winning the most, and they've got themselves in front and just sort of slipped up. And I mean, Colin Charlesworth said afterwards they didn't hit the heights they have in previous games, and that's the thing for some of the teams like Huntley that have been mid-table to take that next step and really progress. That sort of game on Saturday is the one where they probably need to go and win, but at the same time shows you how tough the league is. Like every round of fixture so far, there's maybe been sort of results you didn't see coming, and that Saturday was no different.
Yep. One more game to discuss. Turriff United 2, Clachnacuddin 2. Sounded entertaining this one. Sam Garnham scored twice for Turriff, first goals for the club, both before the break. Troy Cooper pulled one back for Clach. Hugh MacArthur was then sent off, but Mikey McKenzie equalised. Anyway, Connor Gethins was also sent off in this one. So we've got to say Wick's Gary Manson showing the most self-control of any Highland manager this weekend, with Sid Mackay also being dismissed for Brora. Turriff have to be frustrated being 2-0 up in this one, don't they?
Against 10 men, perhaps, but I mean, Turriff were well worth their 2-0 lead. Garnham took his goals well, but Troy Cooper's touch to get Clach back in it, his first touch to open up the whole goal to then finish, is terrific to get Clach back in it. In terms of the red card, I do have a degree of sympathy for MacArthur here. It's the two players are running right in front of the dugout, and Garnham actually hooks in MacArthur's arm and then goes to ground. But the referee, who has one look at it, and obviously not the one that I've been able to watch a few times, goes, "Oh, he pulled him down, second yellow off." And I think that's where Connor Gethins, let's just be honest, the head's come off here, and he said something to the referee, and he's going, "Well, you can go with him."
Turriff's masters of the dark arts.
Yeah, but with 10 men, Clach, obviously, it lit a fuse under them, and they finished the game strongly. They could have won it, actually, with the 10 men.
That's what Gethins said. His biggest complaint was that it took going down to 10 men and sort of that bit of a stooshy with the red card to really sort of spark his team into life.
Yeah. Okay, then, another good result there for Clachnacuddin. Decent start from them. Let's have a look at the Breedon Highland League standings as they are now if you're watching online. Okay, thank you for listening to Highland League Weekly, the podcast. That's everything we have to discuss this week. Thank you to Callum and Paul for joining me today. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please consider subscribing to watch the full Highland League Weekly show over on the Press and Journal website. Just a reminder, you need to be a subscriber to do that, but you can subscribe via our sports pack, and that'll get you access to Lossiemouth against Deveronvale highlights and Keith against Buckie Thistle highlights this week. We'll be back with more analysis next week. Until then, please enjoy the football, whichever games you're watching.